I'm Matt Landau of VRMB, and this is Unlocked, Season 6, Magic Zones. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in business-grade smart property solutions, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. Listeners, I want to open up about something and speak from the heart, a theory that I've never officially, or at least properly, said out loud. I've been waiting all season to share this interview with you. And the reason I like it so much is that Darrell, Looney, and Sherry Woodhouse represent for me the essence of the vacation rental movement. I place their business genius and their positioning at the very front of our innovation curve. They are the vacation rental disruptors. But you're not going to find any newspaper headlines who are now obsessed with short-term rentals championing this small scale too often. But everybody else that we've interviewed this season, from the largest vacation rental managers to the sharpest CEOs to the wizards of finance and scale, all these people know, if they're being completely honest with themselves, that there's only one profile that's the truest stakeholder in the vacation rental game, and that's the property owners who manage their own businesses. These are the people that have the absolute final say. I know what you may be thinking. This demographic is too small. They can't keep up with the amount of work. They aren't fluent enough in the technology to make a significant dent in the marketplace. But I'm here to offer you an additional perspective, because Sherry and Darrell own Villa Mais Oui in Jamaica, and they manage the villa along with their incredible team from their home in Illinois. They market, they advertise, they brand, they even community build with the best in the industry, and they do it remotely. This is the last episode of Season 6, by the way, so there's not going to be any episode coming this week. You have plenty of time to really marinate on the conclusions that Sherry and Darrell have figured out over the years. More than any interview this season, I think they have defined and arrived at their magic zone or sweet spot. And no, fair warning, their journey was not easy. It was definitely not fast or overnight, and it certainly was not always fun. But this is vacation rentals. It's messy. It's difficult. It takes time. But it's also such a rewarding industry that can change your life. It can change the lives of your employees, and it's regularly changing the lives of your guests around the world, one stay at a time. My one wish for this episode is for you to listen, and if you find it insightful, if it changes even a tiny bit the way you view your own business, please share it with one vacation rental colleague. Because if you do that, we can all be a little bit more on the same page. We can use Sherry and Darrell as our magnetic north, as we're all rowing into this future of vacation rental hospitality, and we're rowing together. All right, here we go. So when I originally asked you guys if you were open to doing an Unlocked interview, you're the first guests in the history of the show to ask if it would be a good idea to do it from your own recording studio.
Oh, yeah, I was going to. And then when I saw his parameters, I realized I don't have Chrome or Firefox on my computers.
But where is this entire musician life that I never even heard about? You send me over your demo. You're just cruising under the radar there, or what?
That's literally it, pretty much. It's been a secondary thing that I've done since I was a teenager, and it's just continued over all the years, and I've just had a lot of fun with it very quietly.
Well, if you'd be open to it, we can use your music as intro for this episode. And folks, if you hear some wonderful jam rock That's actually Darrell. How long you been doing this now?
Oh God. uh, I guess embarrassingly about 40 years.
And now we're really breaking through, making it
Yeah.
big.
Right.
And we also have Sherry here, and it's not normal that we do two people at the same time, but you guys are practically one person. And where are you sitting right now? Describe to me the specific room and the geography.
So right now I'm sitting in my home office in Central Illinois. This is where I do a lot of my blogging.
Business work,
Yeah,
villa work,
right.
everything is here. And to lay it out in front of you, she has two large computer screens, which she demanded that she has to have, and all of the note cards for different questions and everything are laid out right in front of us.
Very well prepared. I would expect nothing less. We have known each other for a number of years. We've had a number of phone calls. We've never actually met in person, but as is this new virtual world that we live in, you can build relationships with people who live at a distance. And you can also build a business at a distance. And you guys are in Illinois, but Villa Mais Oui is in Jamaica. And your website is always one of the first ones that I share with independent property owners to help them see what it looks like when an owner or operator really opens up and communicates who they are, why they are connected to this destination and this particular home. And there's this wonderful paragraph on the About Us page, Sherry, that says, when Darrell and I married in 1990, his love affair with Jamaica began. Over the years, we noticed that the weight of the ever-popular all-inclusive resorts was becoming synonymous with a Jamaican vacation, diminishing travelers' opportunities to experience Jamaica's true culture and identity, which I just think is so amazing. I mean, if I'm a guest and I'm reading that, I'm like, wow, this is somebody that I want to meet, that I want to get to know. Sherry, walk us through what Villa Mais Oui is to a traveler, just so folks can get an idea of the actual business offering.
So the villa itself is 8 bedrooms on an acre. It comes fully staffed. We have a chef, butler, housekeeper, laundress, groundsman, so fully staffed. Um, we have a ton of amazing on-site amenities such as pool, hot tub, tennis court, um, mini basketball course, or sorry, half basketball court, putt-putt golf. We have an outdoor movie theater, mini disc golf, billiards.
It's like a compound.
A gym, more things than I could possibly list. And the reason we did that was because we really wanted to cater to groups of varied interests as well as ages. You know, we really think about the guest experience. So let's say, for instance, it's raining. What's the guest gonna do? You know what I mean? But even though the villa has all those amenities on site, it's not just about being in a nice villa, it's also about being in Jamaica. So we help people to see Jamaica from their comfort level. You know, there are some people who want to see everything that's Jamaican. There are other people who, they kind of just want to stay home and bond with their family members. Well, if they're bonding with their family members, we don't want them to be bored. Hence, they have a million different amenities on site that they can choose from. We, for instance, like to introduce people to Jamaican food. So guests have the opportunity to sample local cuisine. But if they're not that adventurous, they can have food that's more American or maybe a little bit more fusion. So we meet people where they are, right?
And Darrell, could you walk us through how this property came into your guys' life? And I know one of your heavy emphases is the role of local Jamaicans and the role of this vacation home in the local community. How is that baked into the business, and how did it all really get off the ground?
We started the overall idea of building a villa actually as a home that we wanted to have for ourselves initially. And the current location is not where we started off to make the property, because her parents had a small piece of land further into town proper itself. And we were initially going to build something there. But then when we started speaking with the architects and designers and everybody, our ideas were larger than the property in terms of, building, what it is that we thought we had in mind. And so we went searching and we ended up where we were, just by happenstance and slash availability of properties at that time, which were for sale. There were others which were for sale, but we didn't really have as much information about what was in the area or what would be good to build on. And the area that we're in is actually called Discovery Bay because it is the area where Christopher Columbus, when he landed successfully, that's according to the historical records, and the description of the topography of the land is exactly where he would have landed, because in no other area of Discovery Bay is there a river that meets the sea directly. All the other rivers are inland. So my point is that we selected where we are because it was very historic. And then we've done further research into the goings on in the area, and there are a lot of historical remnants there. Like, for example, the first hotel, I think it's the Hotel Wellington. It was around the bay in Rio Bueno, and that was from the 1600s.
Wow.
And there's remnants of that building still there. And, so it's a very historic site. And we just kind of decided that we wanted to be part of that. So that's how we ended up there.
And there's the architectural, the historical patrimony. Then there's the human patrimony, the people who live in a destination, and what kind of, as opposed to these large resorts that we were talking about, that travel trends seem to be moving away from. What did you really want to emphasize with regards to the values of this business and local employees?
So it was very important to us that the villa contributed directly to Jamaicans. So all our employees are Jamaicans. Some are from the immediate area of the villa, and others live a distance away. But the reality is that, at the end of the day, we're helping at least six, if not seven, different Jamaican families. These are people who have children or family members who they have to help support. So being able to employ locals is something that's really important to us. And by employing locals, guests get the benefit of the local experience. Because one of the things that we do when we hire staff is, we don't just hire people to do jobs, we also hire for personality. And so they're excited about helping to educate guests about Jamaica and to make sure that the guests have a good time.
And what's the secret to keeping those relationships alive and strong? from a distance because you guys aren't on the ground all the time?
Communication. It's very important that we use different modalities to keep in touch and make sure that the folks at the villa know what's going on, what we expect to have happen, what schedules and itineraries are going to look like. It really helps to make sure that they're an integral part of that, simply because of the fact that they have eyes and ears on the ground.
And is that like telephone, text message, Zoom, everything, all the above?
So we use WhatsApp a lot. That's probably the most common thing that we use. And honestly, it's a godsend because you can do either text messaging or you can do video calling. There's another one called Duo, um, which is through Google,
Google.
isn't it? We also use Google Docs so we can share documents, and we also use um, Amazon. What's that? Amazon Echo Show.
Yes.
Yes,
For direct
for
video
direct
calls and
video
group
calls.
calls.
I started off by sharing how much I admire your guys' personality in your marketing. What makes you a true limited edition operator is that your personality comes through singing. But I know that it wasn't always that way. And that we've had conversations over the years about opening up, about revealing who you are. Can you walk us through just that general journey for perhaps a property owner who doesn't really want to put up a photo of their face, doesn't really want to open up about who they are and what the difference has made?
You know, it's just a crazy world. You just never know when you're dealing with people, right? But the reality is that, for most people, I think the risk is low, but it's still a risk. And so that's part of um, why we didn't want to be so out there. But the other thing too is people have their biases, and the more we take ourselves out of the equation, then the more the house can speak for itself, as opposed to any kind of judgment of us as people. But it's a fine line, though, because you need to enhance the know, like, trust factor when you're renting your home to others, and they need to know you. So you have to decide for, I think each person will have to decide for himself or herself to what extent they want to be out there while making sure that they still have that know, like, trust factor. So, for instance, our property is licensed by the Jamaica Tourist Board. We're a member of the Better Business Bureau. We're on different business sites, different listing sites, I mean, just to have a presence, we get excellent reviews. So those are things that help to enhance that know, like factor that I'm talking about. Know, like, and trust factor, I mean. And also when we talk to people, we really try to do the best job of being helpful to them when they contact us. So we're very good about explaining what's involved, what the process is, what they can expect. So they come to know us as people and in the capacity of people for whom they're renting. So, it's more of a relationship that's being developed over time. And the more we thought of it that way, the easier it became.
Love that because I think that's such a great advice for anyone who is trying to figure this out. You can have layers about how much you reveal. You don't necessarily have to put it all out there up front, but chances are someone who does eventually reach out or inquire, or someone who is actually staying who's got a question, you can open up over the course of that process and build the relationship that way.
An interesting offshoot of this has been something that's been developing a lot more recently, which is we seem to be a go-to location for people who have questions about Jamaica and doing different things in Jamaica. They're not necessarily inquiring about our property per se, but I'll get phone calls for folks asking how to fill out the immigration form.
Do you help them out?
Of course. How many times have we gone through this and seen the different iterations that have come about with that form and everything now? Because it's really interesting. I really like getting those phone calls because it's just a way for us to bolster the validity of our brand.
Actually, one of the most popular blog posts about filling out the immigration form and getting through the airport as quickly as possible are their blog posts that I wrote.
I love that. You're segueing perfectly into my next category of questioning, which is this incredible independent brand that you've built. And I think a lot of people ask this question: can an independent property owner build their own brand? And as you may have guessed, I believe firmly that they can. But I also recognize that it takes a lot of work and it's not overnight success by any means. You guys have an absolutely amazing logo. Are those hummingbirds?
Yes,
Two hummingbirds. Is that the local? I mean, is that the bird of Jamaica?
yes, the the Dr. Bird. Yes,
And you reached out to a graphic designer with an idea. You went through some iterations, and poof, you got your own logo. Is that what happened?
yes, exactly.
Pretty much,
And how much did that cost?
maybe $75 US, something like
No,
that.
nothing. Maybe about 100 and a little bit.
Right.
Did you use Netmen Corp for that?
Yes.
Okay, that's a great resource that we reference often in the inner circle. If you want a really reasonably priced logo with unlimited revisions, Netmen Corp, and let them know you're a member of the inner circle, even if you're not, and they'll give you a discount as well as a style guide. Darrell, you were going to add something on to that brand question comment.
The fact that we have a logo that we love and is able to represent us in various ways, whether it's just the image or if we're using it on like letterhead and all of that, and it really stands out and represents us well. I think that there's no substitute for that at all.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to talk a little bit more about the various marketing efforts that you've put in over the years, which I see compounding. It's a significantly different kind of investment, whether it's your time or your energy or your money that you're using to allocate, than using a listing site, for instance, which is also an investment, because the independent marketing portfolio diversifies and it compounds. You own it all. So it kind of matures over time. Can you give us, Sherry, a brief overview of your main day to day activities or month to month?
I spend quite a bit of time blogging, and I think that has been very, very helpful in terms of being seen as an authority on different topics. Also, I try to answer questions that people are asking, so we're perceived as being helpful. The other thing too is the information that I put out, I think, matches the experience when they arrive at the villa. And if anything, the experience actually exceeds what they expected. We really embrace that help, don't sell
Mm.
approach. One of the things that we did quite early on as we were thinking about branding is really trying to figure out what do we stand for, so people sort of know what to expect when they come to us. For instance, everybody will say, "Oh, you want to be 5 stars," or they talk about being luxury. But we took a little different approach with that. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who was a consultant, and she said, "Oh, what do you want to be?" And I said, "Well, 5 stars, a 5 star resort." And she said, "Okay." But then the more I thought about it, I realized, no, that's not what I wanted. I was fine being 4 stars, but delivering 5 star service. There's a very big difference. If you go to the Ritz Carlton, there's a certain expectation that you have. You know, one of the most disappointing experiences is going to a hotel that builds it, or a property, any property, that builds itself as a 5 star experience. And you show up and, it's a solid 4 star. Whereas you would have felt better if you knew it was 4 star or 3 star or even 2 star, but they gave you service that was better than what you expected. And so it's possible that you may find the word luxury on our website, but I'm actually trying to go through and removing reference to it because for us, that's not what it's about. Luxury means different things to different people. And so let other people decide that we're luxury. I don't need to tell people that we're luxury.
There's something really interesting that you have kind of embedded in your philosophy there for me, and it's that your guest experience, the thing that happens the moment they book and open the door to the villa and experience during their stay and then depart, that's almost in your marketing column as it relates to future bookings and referral bookings. Is this whole strategy of building an independent enough of a brand so that people can find you, so that you have communicated your authority, so that you have realistically set expectations, so that you can under promise and over deliver to a degree. Has that paid off? Like, if for someone who's considering doing all that for one home, is it worth it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
The thing is, May We has soul. And by taking this approach, we have also put our soul into it. You know, focus on quality, the quality of the experience. And so that gives us our drive to keep going. You know, for instance, let's say we have a guest who wants to go scuba diving. Sure, you can go and scuba dive with a local scuba diving company, or I can get my friend, a marine biologist, to take you scuba diving. Now, how is that? Scuba diving with a marine biologist. Now, I don't need to put luxury in my description. Do you get it?
That's a completely different kind of luxury that I would never, not even be aware of.
Exactly.
Precisely.
The quality of the experience is our goal.
So you've built this really incredible model, and you've carved out a niche, and you've distinguished yourself from the all-inclusive resorts. Then the pandemic happens, and we've had a couple of conversations from the peak of the pandemic up until now. But can you summarize the increased biggest challenges of running this business from Illinois in the pandemic?
the
You're like, no, we can't even summarize that for you.
Right. It was a waterfall of just things which reared their ugly heads, and each one demanded um, that we take this opportunity to address them. one of the biggest projects that we ended up having to undertake during all of this time was landscaping. The villa, we've been running the villa since 2000, and consequently all of the trees and shrubbery and everything that make up our wonderful landscaping has had opportunity to mature as plants do. And we found that we needed to overhaul that entire experience. And long story short, as a result of the pandemic happening, we now have almost completely different landscaping, to the point where we need to get new pictures. And it's a more thrilling thing now, because we were able to take this opportunity to turn something negative like the pandemic and us having to shut down everything in terms of operations, to being able to turn within the villa and look at each of the systems and the problems that we needed to deal with. And that sort of overhaul is something that you just never get a chance to do when you're busy. And the pandemic gave us the perfect opportunity to do that. And now that we've revamped it, it's now time to call in the photo shoot people again.
I love that.
It made us realize that you cannot rely on any one source for income, for business. You just can't. So one of the things that we are pivoting to is to become more of a venue for destination weddings. With the pandemic, weddings were basically canceled except for the smallest weddings. And it's a trend across the world now for weddings to be smaller. Well, we have 8 bedrooms and we can sleep between 16 to 20 people. So we decided to pivot and increase our capacity for weddings, not capacity in terms of number of bedrooms, but in terms of as an offering. So by enhancing the landscaping, which included revamping the waterfall that's on the property and so forth, we're making the grounds that much more attractive to a different group of people, brides.
Your logo is also literally two birds getting married.
Exactly.
Two birds kissing. Can you just give us a brief understanding of how, financially speaking, the vacation rental business fits into your ownership of this home? Is the goal to cover costs? Is the goal to make as much money as possible? Is the goal to use income to upgrade the home? Like, what's your general view on that?
So, one of the things that the pandemic did was actually cause us to evaluate that very question. And now we do not see this as our second home. It is a business, and business is supposed to take care of business. So the villa, therefore, needs to be profitable to take care of the staff that's there, take care of the upgrades that are necessary or will be necessary. We will not be doing this out of pocket anymore. The villa has to do this. This is a big mindset shift.
And now a word from our sponsors. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation. But instead of me telling you how great I think they are or reading off some kind of script, here's Karen and John Bobby of Sunset Properties.
Point
Fabulous.
Central, no other way. We tried other locks, and the Point Central locks blows all
We
the
did
other
a
companies.
test. We did,
We did.
6 of every one available.
And because we're at the very end of the island, we have limited internet. We have limited, as you know, cell service.
Access to teammates.
Exactly. And so therefore, and then you also have a harsh environment here with the salt water and the wind and, you know, all that other good stuff out there. So we wanted to make sure that our locks stood up to the environment and that they were always pretty much, 90% ready to rock and roll and not losing,
And Point
connection.
Central won the competition.
Hands down. No connections lost.
Like we had attrition on the others in 3 months.
Attrition, literally the things
Literally,
were dying.
things didn't stop working.
I could not have said that any better myself. If you'd like to learn more about Point Central, head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB. They're now accepting property managers with less than 5 properties, which gives everybody the excuse to get a little bit more connected. And Breezeway, a property care and automation platform that solves the challenges of ensuring clean, safe, and high-quality properties in the wake of the pandemic. And instead of hyping Breezeway myself, here's Christina Thorensen of Chattanooga Vacation Rentals when I asked her what's the single technology shift that she considers most important to her business.
I think there are some folks on the property care housekeeping side that are doing some really cool stuff with confirming sanitization and disinfecting of properties. That I think where we're going to see technology with every housekeeper has a cell phone and they're checking into their system and checking out when they're done. They're taking pictures of the chemicals they're using and the spaces they've cleaned. And I think that is a technology shift. That's something that the guest might be able to access directly moving forward.
I like that. Let's give a shout out. Who are you talking about right now?
Well, I see Jeremiah Gall and Breezeway does some really cool stuff with that. You know, they're trying to do some things where they're incorporating that tech that's already available in the smartphone to help increase the guest's level of comfort, which I think is good.
I couldn't have said that any better myself. Head over to breezeway.io/VRMB, where you can do a free demo and secure free implementation if you decide to sign on. That's roughly a $1,000 value. That's breezeway.io/VRMB. Now let's get back to the show. Have you found yourself making any other decisions under this new prism?
We need to think of it from a less emotional standpoint and more of a business standpoint, because that's what it is. You know, we have a son and we need to give him a business if this is something that he's interested in, because otherwise it's going to be a noose around this child's neck. How is he going to be able to afford it and keep it if we're not here? It would not be a gift, I assure you.
And is that the goal? Is that the goal, to pass this down to your son?
I don't think we've gotten that far in the thought process yet.
Yeah, he's like 6 or something, right?
He's actually 15, but
oh my gosh, time flies.
Time does fly, right? But our thought process really has, because we've shifted more into operating, not just only operating as a business, but operating as a self-sufficient business, which means that it has to turn enough of a profit in order to take care of its own issues without our input. And then, having done that, we are now actually able to project and see where it could be possible for it to be a money-making venture, where it would lead to other opportunities in the future should we decide to develop it further or pivot into something else eventually.
This for me encompasses such a powerful transition, psychological change, as you put it, that I think unlocks, no pun intended, that's also the name of this podcast, the potential of the independent vacation rental professional. Because when you do make that slight but all too important psychological change, and you do start viewing it as a business, and you do put profit first, it doesn't mean that you don't still love it and still have that emotional connection, but you begin to make slightly more shrewd decisions. You begin to justify things a little bit differently. And there's still crossover. I think you're likely still making generous gestures to guests that are not profitable in the next fiscal quarter, but rather the next year or 2 years. But this is also like not why you originally got started in it. So I'm curious if there's been any moments in this process at which you've considered quitting or maybe handing the home over to a professional manager on the island.
So quitting has arisen in conversation, but largely because of the of not wanting this to be a noose around our son's neck. So it's more of an emotional reaction. Quitting is really not a realistic option, and we know that. So basically we use that negative energy to figure out how to forge ahead. Have we thought about maybe turning it over to a management company? Again, not seriously. At one point, we did ask a few, but most of the management companies, they only want the beachfront properties. We are less than a 2-minute walk from the beach, but we're technically not beachfront. But again, it's fine. What that caused us to realize is that for the level of commitment and service that we aspire to, we need to be there guiding that, impressing that on our staff so they know our expectations and deliver it. My fear with turning it over to a management company would be we would just be, villa number 10 out of 100. That's not who May We is.
And have you ever considered selling the property?
That has also come up in discussion several times. I think the main thing is we'd have to find a proper buyer. It's almost as though you have like your favorite collectible, and you only will let it go not only for the right price, but for the person who you feel will love it as much as you do. You know, that is the issue, because I don't know. I mean, I guess somebody would buy it just to have it as their own private home, but I just feel that if it's going to be rented, that there needs to be that quality of experience that's shared with people who are coming to visit Jamaica. So I think even though we've talked about it and we've batted numbers about that kind of thing, but we have had no serious decision that that's the way we're going to go at this point.
Right. We're not serious.
Would you also say that all the upgrades that you've made and potentially the track record of bookings that you've created would have enhanced the value of the real estate?
Absolutely. And that was one of the main reasons why we did it. We thought about what investment during this pandemic would give us the most return on investment. And investing in the real estate project was something that we felt was very important. It raised the property value, but also it has put us in a different category in terms of being able to do weddings and being even more marketable as a wedding venue. So that will assist us with our financial gains. We also, for instance, made the decision to put in the first phase of our solar system.
Nice. Tell me about that.
So Jamaica has one of the most expensive rates of electricity in the entire world. I think it's even more than Hawaii. I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but it is incredibly expensive. There's only one electric company, and I will leave it at that.
We're talking monopoly.
Right. And so, when guests are there, not everyone is, you know, paying attention to turning off the air conditioners when they're not in the rooms and so forth. You want them to have a nice experience, so you don't want to be going behind and turning off. It's a very difficult situation when it comes onto that.
But the upside of the whole effort is that we've managed to decrease our carbon footprint by like 40%. And guests, when they come to experience May We, they can know that they are traveling green, basically, now that we've gone through all of this effort.
The environmentally conscious aspect to me is one of the best amenities that any vacation rental professional could apply to their property or their business. Not just because it's amazing for the environment, but also because there's an increasing awareness amongst travelers to choose stuff that is conscious. So it's really a triple win.
And we're looking at many more ways of going green. For instance, we've switched out many of the appliances to more energy efficient appliances. We've switched out to LED light bulbs. We're collecting rainwater even more than we did before, because our gardens are very, very important to us. And so being able to reuse that rainwater that would ordinarily go to waste is just something that's important to us.
When we talk about remote management, which I think when done well, is really a new kind of thing. The fact that you as an entrepreneur couple are effectively running this business from wherever you happen to be in the world. But it's also not easy. And there's challenges that are not the same as if you were physically on the ground all the time. Are there any tools or secrets that seem to help streamline that process that you're using?
Well, we mentioned several of the apps and things of that nature that we use, like the WhatsApp and the Google Docs and so forth. But we do invest in training the staff. Right now, I'm actually in the process of rewriting and linking job descriptions to certain maintenance things that need to be done to add an extra layer of accountability. Because what happens sometimes is, something isn't done, or, you know, something is missing or whatever, and nobody knows anything. And that's a challenge, because that's a big source of waste.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're licensed by the tourist board, there are certain inspections that we need to have, such as like for fire safety and health inspections. They come in and they check the kitchen. The staff have to have food handlers certifications. They check the pool and so forth. So the fact that we're going to be having those inspections, which we have to pass, is also reinforcement for them, or reminders for them to make sure they do a good job. We also have written protocols in place, like, for instance, for COVID, our protocols were created in consultation with health professionals, references to the CDC, WHO, the Jamaican government, and then they're accepted by the Tourism Product Development Company. And they actually come in and do spot checks to make sure that those guidelines are being followed. So, for instance, there's a book at the villa where anybody who comes on the property has to have an assessment of symptoms done, as well as the temperature checked, and it's recorded in the book. So, on any given day, you could look and see, okay, so and so came here and no symptoms, and they didn't have a fever.
What's the importance of those protocols, and more broadly beyond just COVID, like standard operating procedures? What's the importance of that in the sustainability of the business? Folks, I think Sherry's answer here in just a moment is what can help any vacation rental business reach your magic zone or sweet spot. It is not the natural first step for a lot of us, but what she's about to say will allow you to hire or delegate or simply more reasonably enjoy your vacation rental business without getting caught too deep in the grind. So let's listen carefully here.
Staffing is one of the most difficult aspects of running the villa. And so sometimes you have staff turnover. And one of the things that we've learned is you really need to make sure that staff is cross trained, not only properly trained, but cross trained. That way you're never dependent on any one individual. The villa needs to be able to function regardless of who is there. So having protocols in place, we have a lot of protocols in place, but even, you know, going into much more detail right now because I want nothing left to chance. People should know, how do we welcome the guests? How do we make our beds? You know, how do we clean our bathrooms? There's a process, there's a protocol. You know, one guest room should not be done a certain way and another one be done a different way. No, there's a standard. There's a May We standard.
What I love about that is, a lot of people in our industry are trying to figure out the puzzle that is standardization across destinations. And because every property is so different, that's a really hard thing to do. It's not like other industries in that sense. But what I love about using standard operating procedures as the benchmark, and it could be any standard operating procedure. It could be how you clean a bedroom. It could be how you prepare breakfast. It could be anything. If you have those standard operating procedures in place, you have created them, and your team uses them, that to me is a mechanism for standardization across the industry. If we look at this sort of flexible thing of standard operating procedures as the benchmark, does that sound like something that would more or less convey to you as travelers, if you were going somewhere new, a degree of confidence about the place you're choosing to stay?
I certainly think so, because it really does help to know that the place where you're going to visit is that things are organized and well run. So that builds confidence and makes people want to book.
And to tag along with what Darrell just said, I think the concept of lack of standardization is something that plagues our industry. There are many people who I know who probably would not book a vacation rental because they would be concerned that they are not sure what they're going to get.
Me, ourselves included. I mean, unless you know an inner circle member somewhere, how are you going to confidently rent something?
And those are some of the things that we thought about as we made our decision to come up with protocols, right? One of the challenges one of the challenges though is figuring out how to actually communicate that with the guests. So that's kind of the next thing that I'm working on.
In all your free time.
Yes, we can say we have protocols and everything, but they won't really be able to see the results of that until they're actually on property. And we have to get through the entire booking process in order to do that first.
We do have the COVID protocols on our website, though.
Right.
Those protocols are there, but the other protocols, no.
And I think our earliest COVID conversation, I think I could sum it up by saying it's going to be a little bit different for every vacation rental professional in terms of what you're doing to make guests safe and how you're communicating that. But the general gist, I think, was make sure you're on top of it and you're letting people know that you're on top of it. You've thought of these things, you've put forth effort, and ultimately that removes a great amount of uncertainty on behalf of the guest. Ultimately, that puts you into kind of an elite category of professionalism, no?
Yes, it certainly does help because, again, when you can convey to folks that are coming to visit that you are confident that you know what you're doing in terms of helping to keep them safe, then that goes a very long way to building the knowing you, the trusting you, the desire to choose you type of mentality. It goes along with it.
There's a trend that I've been seeing over and over again. It's been a gradual trend that has just accelerated because of the pandemic. And it's a two-part um, realization that arguably the most influential individuals in the vacation rental industry today are those who A, own the properties, because ultimately every property management company needs the property owners in the first place, and B, those who are curating the actual experiences, those who are actually hosting the guests. And in some cases, those are two different individuals. But in your case, you are both of those things. So I'm curious, do you see a really exciting future based on the increased demand for vacation rentals? And what does the future look like for Villa May Oui?
Well, coming off of this past year's experience and our making the bold choice to pivot our offerings, we're vacillating between optimism and a little bit of anxiety, I guess. But I think for the most part, we're quite optimistic, mostly because of the fact that we do like to be the individuals who are curating the experiences for our guests. We like to be involved in their itineraries and their culinary choices and making sure that the staff is up to date on what they expect to have when they come. So that has helped us feel very positive about everything. And even when we're planning weddings and other events, because we're involved, even if we're not the actual wedding planner, but we are involved in the venue piece, that makes us feel, very positive and very, hopeful and optimistic rather, of us continuing to offer a quality product. And we believe that quality will ultimately win out. We just got to let everybody know that we exist.
Sherry, your thoughts on that last question?
I'm very optimistic. Some anxiety, like Darrell mentioned, but largely because of the financial investment. It's a gamble, right? Because we don't know what will happen with COVID and these different variants. I'm hoping that more and more people will get vaccinated so that travel in general can come back. That said, I'm optimistic. We are fairly booked out for July and August and December. We're filling in other dates as we go along. I think some people are a little cautious as well in terms of booking, but overall, I think we're headed for even bigger and better things. I think the improvements that we've made have made us better than we were before. We have past guests who are already planning on coming back later this year, and I,
Next year.
and also next year. And honestly, I cannot wait for them to see all the changes that we've made. Um, yeah, so I'm very excited, and I'm also very, very optimistic. Travel will come back. It may take some time, but travel will come back, and we're going to be there, and we're going to have even better experiences that we can offer, our guests.
I am also an optimist, as you know, but I'm also a realist. And from my vantage point, having seen you guys build this business from the ground up, having seen all the legwork that you've put into doing not just the operations and the business modeling properly as it relates to the community in which you operate, but also on the marketing side of things, really going to a great length to build your own brand, to do the online marketing techniques that are very common in every other industry, and yet somehow in ours tend to get pushed to the back burner in favor of quick wins off Airbnb or VRBO. You guys, for me, have put all the foundation elements in place. You have positioned yourselves as this unique and distinct offering from the traditional resorts and frankly, from the classic beachfront accommodations, because you're up in the mountains. And as a result of this surge in demand for vacation rentals, and like you said, guarantee that travelers will return and probably will return in droves, it, for me, places you guys at the very center of the future of the industry. And I may be overly optimistic here, but I like to think that you are really the ones who are disrupting hospitality in the end. It's not the Vacasas of the world. It's Darrell and Sherry. Maybe we should just leave that as the last point.
We certainly like to hope so.
Right. From your lips to God's ears.
Yes.
Do you have any tips for anyone who wants to get started? How do they learn the right way to do things?
Research. Know the market that you're going to go into, know what the trends are, basically know what you're getting yourself into.
I would say think of your guest first. And if you put your guest's experience first, you'll make good decisions. Don't buy expensive sheets because you're trying to be like the Ritz-Carlton. Buy expensive sheets because you want to give your guests a good night's sleep.
What a beautiful note to end on. Today's most dynamic hospitality comes from a community of vacation rental professionals who are dedicated. No formal training and incredibly diverse backgrounds. But these entrepreneurs are proactively enriching the communities where they're based, one guest at a time. With travel decimated by the pandemic and regulatory battles emerging in almost every destination, a portrait of an industry on fire starts to emerge. And hardworking vacation rental businesses like Sherry and Darrell that give back to their community, you are the ones caught in this storm. Confusion about our industry is at an all-time high. We're blamed for skyrocketing housing prices, changing neighborhoods, over-tourism. It can get overwhelming. But whenever you're looking for a benchmark, I'd encourage you to think about Sherry and Darrell. Try to allow their decisions, their way of doing business, to challenge your thinking. Aspire to achieve the level of small business magic that they have refined. If you found this interview insightful, consider joining Sherry and Darrell and me inside VRMB's Inner Circle community. They've been members since the very earliest days, and they represent what I like to think of as our magnetic north, the direction that every vacation rental professional, big and small, can aim to row towards. That's community.vrmb.com/register. Until next time.